Imagine a world where the deity responsible for your community's health, for medicine, even for prophecy,
Yes.
just vanishes,
Yeah.
gone, leaving everyone feeling medically and spiritually abandoned. That kind of abrupt absence, well, that really defines the ultimate crisis in ancient Anatolia.
It really does. And today, we're doing a deep dive into some fragmented but really profound sources about this exact kind of crisis. We're pulling threads from both Luwian and Hittite traditions.
Right.
And these texts, they can be frustratingly brief. It seems the original audience just knew the background mythology already. They were looking for the how-to, the operational protocols.
So that's our mission for this deep dive then. To unpack this legend of the lost goddess Kamrusepa, we want to look at the consequences when a deity goes missing, and how these myth fragments actually reveal a surprisingly sophisticated system, this thing called analogy magic.
Exactly. It's a fascinating window into how these societies didn't just, pray for order. They actively tried to re-engineer it through ritual when things went wrong.
Okay, so let's get into that core crisis. Where do we start? With Kamrusepa herself.
Yeah, let's establish who she was. Kamrusepa was a critically important figure. She's the primary Luwian goddess we know of for health and prophecy.
And so important that she was actually equated with another god, Katahzipuri.
That's right. Katahzipuri was the pre-existing Hatti god of medicine and magic. So you see this synthesis, this blending of cultures around this absolutely essential role of the divine healer.
What really strikes me is how practical the sources make her loss sound. It wasn't just, oh, sadness, our goddess is gone.
No, not at all. It was immediate, tangible devastation. When Kamrusepa disappears, the sources are very clear. They paint this picture of material crisis. People are left destitute.
Destitute, wow.
Yeah, without a protector, without doctors, and crucially, without medicine. Think about that. It wasn't just a spiritual blow. It was like an epidemic-level collapse of their healthcare system, basically, all dependent on this divine knowledge.
And do we know how she left? There are hints, right, about horses.
There are. Although she wasn't strictly the horse god, she's strongly associated with horses. Some of these fragments, they depict her preparing for a journey. Horses already harnessed to her chariot.
Suggesting maybe a planned trip. Or maybe something else. A forced exile.
It's hard to say for sure from the fragments, but whatever the reason, her departure results in this cosmic disorder. This shift from divine presence to absence, it's the absolute trigger for the ritual response.
Okay, so if the gods leave the physical world, the rituals have to step in and manipulate reality back into shape.
Precisely. That's the logic behind it.
So if her disappearance caused this total healthcare and societal collapse, how did they actually structure the magical fix?
Yeah.
Let's walk through these protocols, this analogy magic.
Okay. Analogy magic, in this Anatolian context, it's almost like structured engineering. It's built on the idea that you perform a symbolic physical action, something you can see and control, to compel the result you want, even if that result is invisible or on a different scale.
And the myths themselves sort of get squeezed into the instructions for the ritual.
Exactly right. The narrative becomes part of the how-to guide.
Okay, so the first big ritual you mentioned involves water. Movement, flow.
Precisely. Kamrusepa arrives at the Great River, and here's the magical action. She enchants the fish, and then all the water sources, the river itself, ponds, springs, everything, she binds them.
Binds them, makes them stop.
Yeah, the text literally says the waters become crippled because of her magic. They can't flow anymore. And this binding of the natural flowing state that represents the community's abnormal state, the crisis they're in.
Okay, so binding symbolizes the problem, the sickness, the disorder.
Which means the cure has to be the opposite.
Unbinding.
Yes. The waters are then released or unbound. The texts even use a specific verb for it, la. This wasn't just a wish. It was a technical, magical command aimed at restoring the baseline, the ideal state.
So by making the physical water flow normally again?
That action serves as the analogy. It's meant to force the community situation back to its own healthy, normal baseline. Fix the symbol, fix the reality.
That logic becomes really clear when they apply it to, say, a person who's sick. Chronic pain, aches.
Yes, the second ritual deals exactly with that. Relieving a patient suffering from, numerous aches, pains, general discomforts, the everyday miseries.
And this is where the detail in the sources gets really specific, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's fascinating. The focus isn't really on the spiritual cause of the pain, like sin or whatever. It's purely on the mechanism of transfer. How do we move the pain out?
So Kamruşepa gives instructions, gather certain things, a kind of transfer kit.
That's a good way to put it. A very specific kit. Step fire. Well-developed spelt, that's a type of wheat from wet fields specifically. Then 3 colors of wool, red, black, and green. And finally, the tips of reeds.
Why those things? Step fire, is that about purification? Heat? Or moving things quickly?
The sources seem to suggest fire is about powerful, quick upward transfer. Like smoke rising and disappearing.
Okay, and spelt. Well-developed from wet fields.
That suggests robustness, right? Healthy life. Something strong enough to absorb the affliction, maybe carry it away, without being overwhelmed itself. It represents vitality.
And the wool colors must be key to the analogy. Red, black, green.
Definitely central. They likely map directly onto the condition and the desired outcome. Red, well, that often represents life, blood, energy. Green usually signifies growth, health, vitality returning.
But the black wool, that sounds like the important one for the transfer itself.
It seems to be. Black often symbolizes the dark earth, maybe death or the sickness itself. So the pain isn't just wished away, it's ritually loaded onto these objects, especially using the black wool as the kind of primary receptacle.
And then the servant takes this kit.
Right. The servant loads all of these objects with magic. That's the phrase used. And then they're rotated over the patient's most troubled spots. Specifically mentioned are the neck and the feet.
Symbolically transferring the pain onto the objects.
Exactly. And that physical action isn't complete without the verbal component. The spoken magic.
The spells that reinforce what's happening.
Yes, and they appeal to cosmic forces. The spells wish for headaches to literally turn into steam and fly up to the sky, a clear upward vanishing motion. And crucially, they state that the black earth, which is symbolized by the black wool, must take the trouble away from the patient's hand or body.
It's a really interesting distinction they make, isn't it, about
Yeah.
what can actually take the illness away.
It is. They seem to believe that small things like clouds or breezes, they just aren't strong enough to conquer serious illness. You need the big guns.
The cosmic heavy hitters.
Right. The immense sky above, the unyielding earth below. Those forces are considered powerful enough to truly defeat the affliction, where lesser things would fail.
So this whole idea of something important going missing, it wasn't just Kamrusepa, it was a broader concept.
Much broader. That raises the question, yeah. If a goddess could vanish, what else could? And the sources confirm this concept extended to, well, to death itself.
The soul could vanish.
Yes, the soul of someone who died could also go missing. And when that happened, it was believed to have been swallowed by this kind of Hades-like entity or place called the Great Way, like the path to the underworld.
Swallowed by the Great Way.
Yeah.
And then what happened to the soul?
It was thought to wander, lost, tormented, roaming the mountains and seas, especially after dark, like a ghost that couldn't find rest.
So if a soul or a god vanishes, how do you get it back?
Yeah.
Who's the divine detective? This is maybe the most surprising part.
It really is. It's the bee.
The bee.
Seriously. A simple, everyday bee. But elevated to this cosmic retrieval expert, the bee is instructed specifically, search tirelessly, not just to make honey, the text insists, but to find the lost god or the lost soul and then capture it tightly and bring it back.
Why a bee? What's the symbolism there?
Well, think about it. Bees are small, highly structured, they're relentless workers, they travel everywhere, they can get into tiny spaces, hidden realms. It actually makes a kind of symbolic sense, doesn't it? The perfect little vehicle for penetrating the unknown and bringing something back.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
But it's also important what they didn't believe, right? About souls.
Yes, very important. Although apparently some local thinkers, maybe philosophers, suggested that a lost soul might eventually enter a newborn child.
Like reincarnation.
Sort of, but the main sources explicitly reject that. They state very clearly that ancient Anatolians were not Gnostics. They didn't believe in that kind of transference or cycle of souls seeking enlightenment outside the body.
So no escaping the body for higher wisdom.
No. Their focus was firmly on retrieval, reincorporation, getting things back to how they should be in this world, the here and now. The goal was always restoring the current order, not escaping it.
Okay, and speaking of restoration, Kamrusepa wasn't the only deity playing hooky. There were others.
Oh, yes. We see this vanishing god trope with other major deities, too. Telipinu is another famous one, and also the powerful storm god of Lizina.
The storm god of Lizina. His story is particularly strange, isn't it?
It's a great example of divine punishment followed by really bizarre behavior. First, he destroys the city of Lizina. We assume it was punishment for some offense, though it's not specified.
Okay, standard angry god stuff so far.
But then he personally starts farming the land he just ruined. He takes up agriculture on the rubble.
Wait, hang on. The storm god destroys the city and then becomes A farmer. On the ruins.
SR, right.
What could that possibly mean? Was the god himself sort of symbolically crippled by his own anger? Forced into this grounding human task as a kind of self-exile or penance?
That's certainly one way to read it, and it fits the pattern. It suggests even the mightiest gods aren't immune to this principle. Absence, even self-imposed absence or strange behavior, leads to disorder. But like all these stories, it ultimately needs a resolution. A happy ending to fully restore cosmic order.
And the mechanism for resetting the whole world involves, what did you call it? The cosmic boiler.
Yeah, something like that. It's like their ancient equivalent of a permanent disposal site for all things bad. First step. The rivers have a job to do. They act as cleansers, carrying all the ominous stuff, all the unlucky residue from the crisis, out into the sea.
Washing it all away. And once it's out in the sea,
It gets sealed away. Permanently. The texts describe these evils being locked into gigantic cauldrons.
cauldrons.
Yeah, huge ones. Made of copper, which is strong, with heavy lead lids to make sure nothing gets out. And these are stored deep beneath the sea.
So, like a divine Pandora's box, but sunk to the bottom of the ocean. They don't destroy the evil, they just contain it. Indefinitely.
Exactly. Using the strongest materials they knew to ensure that containment holds, it's very practical, in a way.
So with the evil locked away, the storm god can finally come back.
He returns, but interestingly, on his journey back, he bumps into 9 other gods, and they basically hold a divine debriefing. They question him.
So even the top god has to answer to a committee, a kind of divine oversight.
It seems that way. He has to face some kind of tribunal before he's fully back in the fold. Now, apparently, he refuses to reveal his secret hiding places, where he was during his farming phase.
He pleads the fifth.
Sort of. But the system accepts his return anyway. His presence, along with the other gods being back in their proper places, reestablishes the ideal order across the cosmos. Balance is restored.
So pulling this all together then, what's the big picture takeaway from these ancient narratives? It really seems like cosmological harmony was directly linked to the physical health and stability of the actual community.
Absolutely. They weren't separate things. When a key piece, whether it was Kamrusepa or a person's soul, or even an angry storm god went missing or out of whack, they didn't just sit around. Sophisticated practical magic was deployed immediately.
Using analogy, using physical transfer.
Right. These sources show us that ancient Anatolian mythology, it wasn't just abstract storytelling. It was much more like a set of practical operational protocols, almost like a divine instruction manual for managing crises.
You didn't just wait for the gods. You actively participated in the cosmic reset through these ritual actions, this symbolic engineering.
You got it. And you know, this leaves us with a really interesting final thought to ponder.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. This was a culture that so carefully cataloged the symbolic ingredients they needed to transfer pain. Specific fire, specific wool colors, specialized wheat. They had a whole system. So the question for you listening is, what might be our modern equivalent of Black Earth taking the trouble? How have we today replaced that kind of ritualized physical transfer of affliction, or have we?
That's definitely something to think about. What is our Black Earth today? Something to mull over till the next time we take a deep dive.